Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Stephanie Rose, and today I will be discussing the Book of the Month Club. 2 years ago, I did 3 months of a subscription. The club may have changed over time. I'm not entirely certain. From the looks of the titles, they look fairly similar in tone. I have 7 books from them. I got 3 the first month, 1 was an add-on, and then 2 in each of the following months. I will show you all of the books first, and then I will get on to discussing them. In the order that I got them, we've got All the Ugly and Wonderful Things by Bryn Greenwood, Circling the Sun by Paula McLean, The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware, Behold the Dreamers by Imbolo Imbui, Good as Gone by Amy Gentry, The Wangs vs. the World by Jade Chang, and A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Tolles. 2 of the books were very easy to read. All the rest of them were a bit harder in varying degrees, but the easiest ones to read were The Woman in Cabin 10 and As Good as Gone. These were the easiest because they're thrillers. The Woman in Cabin 10 I would rate fairly low, actually. It's not a difficult read. It's not a very deep read, but if you've read The Girl on the Train, it has a very similar feel. The main character is unlikable, unreliable, and unless I remember incorrectly, I believe the ending was very anticlimactic. You get very, very frustrated with the main character in this book. Not so for Good as Gone, which kept me guessing, and I really actually liked that one. I would say that's one of my favorite books from my collection. The hardest book to read when it came to sucking you in was The Wangs vs. the World, not because it was a bad book. It was a really good book, but it was interesting bits interspersed with really boring, slow storylines. And while it gives you a more in-depth look into each of the characters, it can get very, very exhausting. So I read this over a course of a few days in spurts because I could not sit down and read it for very long amounts of time. One other complaint that I have, which probably diminished my experience with the book, although it didn't have anything to do with the plot or it being boring, was there's a lot of Chinese in the book in conversation. Like, a lot of the dialogue is in Chinese. I don't know Chinese. I know like maybe 3 phrases and not even very well. While in some spots you could kind of guess the meaning just by the context, most of the time there really wasn't any way to understand what exactly was said, and I feel like a lot of the experience with the book was lost in that. One book that was really, really hard to read due to the content was All the Ugly and Wonderful Things. There's a lot of different types of abuse in this book. Pretty much all of it dealing with an underage girl. The book starts when she's 5 and ends when she's around 20. So, very good book, but it's very, very difficult to read. Don't read it if you get triggered by varieties of child abuse. So there's that. I got it because I wanted a challenge. My favorites so far out of the selection were As Good as Gone, because that was a fast, easy, exciting, interesting read. And my other one is A Gentleman in Moscow. It's a very poetic and endearing writing, and the main character, he's characterized very well, and I would say that the storytelling on this, while a bit slow, is on point, and I'm never bored. For Behold the Dreamers, I haven't read very far. After I finished The Wangs vs. the World, I had to choose between this one, Gentleman in Moscow, and Circling the Sun. And this seemed very, very similar to The Wangs vs. the World, and it is also pretty thick. It's about 300 pages, and I did not want to plod through something again, so I decided to wait. I will finish reading this one. It might take me a little bit to get into it, but it seems interesting. And Circling the Sun reads kind of like a memoir. So do some of the other books, but that's because it's very slow, kind of plodding, and although not as very slow paced as The Wangs vs. the World, but it's starting to pick up the pace. I started reading this whenever I first got the box, because this is from the first month. I had lost interest pretty quick, so I'm just trying to get back into it again. Incidentally, that also happened with Good as Gone. I started reading it, and then I stopped. I'm assuming that I had a pile of library books that I was trying to get through, and I decided to prioritize the books that I had to return over the book that I had permanently. But I guess I stopped right before it got interesting, because it was the first one that I started reading to finish out reading my collection, and I could barely put it down. As far as the quality of the book club goes, now realize that things may have changed in the past couple years. but it doesn't seem like the judges are especially critical of the books. I'm not always sure that their selections are good. Also, there's not a very large variety amongst the books. They have 5 books, and a lot of them are very, very similar. The books are attractive enough, although I'm not really one for branding. I don't like branding that shows. For the most part. You can see they have a symbol, book of the month, and they have it on the front here and on the back. And these books actually look pretty decent naked. It looks alright, yeah. As I said, a lot of the books have a very similar feel to them, which is great if you like the type of book and they're the kind that you enjoy reading most of the time. But for me, they're just not. These are kind of a rare read type genre. I would say that if it is something that you really enjoy, then it is worth the money because the pricing is pretty good. On the inside flap of this book, it says $28, and the subscription is either $15 or $10, and additional books are $10 as well. So that's actually a really good bang for your buck. So to summarize, the book selection of the Book of the Month Club is fairly hit and miss on whether they're very interesting or not. There's not a lot of variety, but sometimes they're surprisingly good. They do try to bring in more up-and-coming authors, especially female authors, and I say that they're fairly worth the money. Good printing, good price, and yeah. I wouldn't subscribe again. I haven't had the best of luck with subscriptions so far, although once I've read all of the new books that I've got in my bookshelf, which may take a little while, I do intend to start trying subscriptions again. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, this was my attempt at reviewing a book club. Do take it with a grain of salt, as it has been a couple years, but I think it's still fairly similar. So anyway, I will see you guys later. I need to finish 2 of the books and read 1, but I will not be covering those in a future video unless I feel like it is especially noteworthy.